This is what democracy looks like.
Everyone's talking about it, at school, at home, and on the streets. The war in Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom. The fight to liberate the people of Iraq has Syracuse residents voicing their opinions for and against the war.
There's people dying, we've killed people, there's American troops dying. We've got to stop this war, bring the troops home.
We as the youth, this is going to be our war. And although the elders have led us to this war, they're not the ones out fighting it. George W. isn't fighting this war.
While this might not stop the war, you can always pray for a miracle, so maybe it might make a difference. It probably won't, but just in the case that it could, I'm glad to be here.
This racist war has got to go!
I don't think anybody is pro-war by any means, but I don't know, I suppose, you know, our leadership is doing what they think is right to protect our interests.
There's still a lot of work to do.
And I think it's wrong of the protesters to protest. I mean, they have the right to protest, but who's keeping them safe? Our guys are keeping them safe.
Some people just can't decide how they feel about the war.
I haven't seen the reason we're there yet. I haven't seen the weapons of mass destruction. Do I think Saddam Hussein should have been ousted from power? Yes, I do. But I think more so the people there themselves should have done that, not an outside source.
Dick Vassar is a local VFW member, and he and some of the other members have a lot to say on the war.
I support the troops. I certainly support the president. I mean, I'm an American. I support the president. I support his decision. That's why we vote.
Under a democracy, we vote for the people and we put our hands in their care. And hopefully they're going to make the right decisions. I may not necessarily agree with them, but I don't want to be up there either. I don't want to be the one making those decisions.
I think it's necessary, not because anybody wants war. I think it's necessary because there are credible threats to our way of life.
Do I think this particular regime poses the greatest threat to us as a country? Probably not, but do I disagree with it? No.
Those VFW members know what it's like to be out fighting wars and know how important it is to be able to have the freedom to express themselves. Since the beginning, Americans have sacrificed their lives to ensure the freedoms that make this country great. World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and now Iraqi freedom. But always one of our first, and many consider most important freedoms, is the right to free speech.
I think people are finally speaking up a lot more than they ever used to. They're not squelched as much as they used to on both sides, and I do welcome it.
And I ran the gamut where I come home and I got spit on and I was all that. I didn't like it at all. The people still had a right to do that, and we had to take it.
Over the years, people have taken to the streets to voice their approval or opposition toward topics like taxes, civil liberties, the draft, and of course, war. And now people across the U.S. and here in Syracuse are using this opportunity to tell the world, or at least their community, how they feel about the war.
President Bush and his administration has talked about war as a last resort. I think that anyone who looks at their actions recognizes that this is not truthful at all, that there were many, many more options that could have been pursued, and that war has not been taken as a last resort.
Indy Major is a coordinator for the Syracuse Peace Council. He and the council are picking up their markers and banners to show their hometown why the group is opposed to the war.
Well, the Peace Council continues to believe that this aggressive war against Iraq was a huge mistake, that it makes us less safe as a people here in the United States and makes the world a less safe place as well. In the bigger picture, I continue to believe that this whole war sort of sets up this precedent that says that the strong, powerful nations in the world can use their overwhelming military might to enforce our will on other countries.
The Syracuse Peace Council was on the streets protesting before the war began, during the war, and plan to continue after the war has ended.
We've organized a number of large demonstrations, and also we have a weekly peace vigil every Tuesday that moves around to different areas of the community. Typically it's small, but it's just a reminder to people that throughout this community there are folks who believe in peace and who are willing to stand up and say that publicly.
Not everyone agrees with Andy, and some want to make sure that the voices to support President Bush in this war are heard, but maybe not so loudly.
I'd like to give my opinion. I'm a veteran, and I support Bush all the way.
We had to get them now. Get them now or they'll get us. And, you know, the protesters, it's like, don't they pay attention?
Given the evidence that I've been presented, I choose to stand behind our country and especially our troops.
Garrett Arwa is a senior at Syracuse University, and he is among those that support our president.
I know a fair amount of students who support the war. I think they support the war because what they see on TV makes our country look good. I mean, I don't think we're a bad country, but I think a lot of the older students and a lot of the younger students who don't really know what's going on support the war just because, you know, they think it's cool that we're the hero in the situation.
This vigil is just part of the message that the Syracuse Peace Council wants people to hear. Groups around the country may have different views, in fact, even opposite views of the Peace Council. But what matters the most is that people get out, get the message out, and enjoy those freedoms they're entitled to.
We got to feel free to express what's in us because in the end, that's the only way we're going to run our country the way we do. And the thing that separates us from an Iraq is that we have the freedom to do that.
And I believe this idea that speaking out to challenge what our government says or does somehow is unpatriotic is such a misunderstanding of what it means to us as a nation, that we were founded on revolution and dissent, and that needs to be an ongoing process.
I talked to my son who's in the Navy recently, and he told me that it's people like us out here protesting the war that helps to keep them safe. We're like the check for our government to not get careless.
There's going to be a lot of people who will disagree, there'll be a lot of people who agree, but at least it won't be silent. People will be airing it, and I think the right answers are going to come out of it.
This is America. I mean, we've had protests in the Civil War. We had draft protests in the American Civil War. It's everybody's right to protest.
I may not agree with it personally, but it's their right, and I will defend their right to protest to my death if it came down to that. I mean, that's why I'm wearing this uniform.
It's been almost a month now since the war began. The Iraqi regime has collapsed. The Iraqi people celebrate, and yet the war goes on. The Iraqi people hope that they will soon enjoy some of the freedoms that we do. Whenever America becomes involved in conflict, there will be those that have a voice for.
I'd like to see more support for our troops. I mean, you know, they're over there protecting us.
And against it.
We're not going to take this placidly sitting down, letting the government think that they're supporting this.
While debates, protests, and marches continue, most people will take a step back to think about those fighting for our and the Iraqi people's freedom. And they have one more thing to say in times of war.
I hope they home real soon. What they're doing, I believe, is right, but nobody likes war. Yeah.